The shuttle slammed into the dust of Charon, 7 with the kind of graceless landing that made Damien Cole wonder if someone up there had a personal grudge against him. His knees buckled with the impact, and before he could curse, the hatch hissed open and a wave of scorching air hit him full in the face. The atmosphere smelled like burnt metal and old bones. He staggered out, squinting against the sun that seemed determined to peel his skin off, and muttered, "5-star vacation spot, clearly. Can't wait for the pool." None of the others laughed. They rarely did. Arrayed around him were the other so-called guardians. Zyrak, the insectoid whose armored body glistened with segmented plates. Serenial, a crystalline intelligence pulsing with slow, deliberate light. And Frol, a quivering jelly sealed in a transparent suit, its colors shifting nervously as if arguing with itself. Their presence screamed authority, calculation, and control. Damien's presence screamed, misplaced cargo hauler who really wanted beer. He scratched the stubble on his jaw and tried not to grin at the absurdity of being thrown into a survival test that was meant to measure civilization's worthiness. The central conflict lay just meters away, spilling down the shuttle's ramp. 42 alien children, eyes wide, limbs shaking, some clutching small possessions, most holding nothing but fear. They were of every imaginable shape and physiology, scaled, feathered, crystalline, soft-bodied, many-eyed, eyeless, but they shared one truth. They were helpless. This trial demanded the Guardians keep them alive in the wilderness of Charon, 7 for 6 weeks, without outside assistance. To the overseers orbiting high above, the children were variables in a test. To Damien, who had never fathered anyone, but had spent half his life hauling orphan machinery through dangerous routes, the kids were just kids, and that meant they were his responsibility. Zyrak clattered his mandibles, commanding in a sharp metallic hiss, formed defensive cluster. Obedience is survival. Weaklings jeopardize the unit. Immediately, half the children froze, intimidated by the warlike insect. Serenial's voice resonated like wind through a cavern. Statistical analysis requires resource division. Prioritize the stronger 20 for nourishment. Attrition is acceptable. Frol gurgled with bubbling enthusiasm. Yes, efficiency. Investment yields. Feed the high-return bodies. Let the others depreciate. Damien blinked at them, horrified. Are you 3 listening to yourselves? These are kids, not busted circuit boards. You don't cut your losses when they trip. You pick them up. Serenial dimmed with disdain. Zyrak rattled with irritation. Frol's colors flashed pink with confusion, then gray with anxiety. But the children's eyes had already found the human. They watched the way he crouched to their level, how he made faces until a few cracked shaky smiles, how he tousled the hair, or nearest alien equivalent, of the smallest ones. He wasn't intimidating. He wasn't cold. He wasn't efficient. He was present, and presence was something they desperately needed. The group's first night on Charon, 7 was meant to establish order. Zyrak insisted on drills, barking at the children to line up, march, and harden their tiny hearts. Serenial projected probability graphs into the sand, explaining why 10 of them should go without food to maximize survival rates. Frol tried to introduce exchange tokens made of rocks, encouraging the children to trade for water portions. The kids grew more bewildered, more frightened. And then Damien, ignoring all 3 of his colleagues, piled scrap wood, sparked a fire, and gathered the children around it. He roasted something vaguely edible, told ridiculous stories about his ship breaking down, and sang an off-key song from Earth. The kids laughed until they cried. Zyrak seethed. Serenial calculated wasted calories. Frol sank sulkily into its suit. Damien winked to the children and whispered, "Don't tell the bugs and crystals, but joy is fuel too." The storm arrived on the 3rd day, and with it came the real test. A wall of orange dust rose across the horizon, sweeping forward with a roar like 10,000 engines. Zyrak screeched, "Formation Delta. Scatter into clusters." Serenial projected optimal retreat vectors. Frol quivered and cried about investment loss. The children panicked, running in every direction, their shrieks swallowed by the gale. Damien's heart slammed against his ribs. Logic said cut losses. Logic said save half. Logic said accept casualties. Damien wasn't built for logic. He bellowed loud enough to shake his throat raw. Grab hands. Chain together. Nobody lets go. Do you hear me? Nobody. Through choking dust and slicing grit, he hurled himself into the storm, scooping up a reptilian toddler, shoving two twins into the crook of his arms, tying belts and straps into makeshift ropes to bind the children together. He took the brunt of the storm's fury, staggering forward inch by inch, eyes burning, lungs on fire. The wind clawed at them, shrieking to tear them apart. Damien roared louder, dragging them through, until at last his legs collapsed beneath an outcropping of rock. When the storm passed, silence fell heavy. The children clung to each other in one long chain, coughing but alive. Damien coughed until blood flecked his lips, then grinned weakly. Told you, vacation weather just needs some work. The children laughed, shaky but real. Serenial's crystalline core pulsed with disbelief, recalculating impossible numbers. Zyrak's mandibles clicked with unspoken frustration. Frol moaned about unfair returns. Damien simply ruffled a trembling child's feathers and told them they'd done great. That night, as the fire cracked again, the children gathered tighter around the human. Zyrak barked orders that went ignored. Serenial offered statistics no one cared about. Frol sulked in its corner, and Damien, bruised and bleeding, leaned back on a stone and let a tiny scale boy curl up on his lap. He was exhausted, starving, thirsty, but his grin never left his face. He had chosen, without hesitation, to throw himself into the storm. He would keep making that choice, storm after storm, no matter the cost. And here, reader, is the truth the galaxies still struggle to understand. Life is not a balance sheet, nor a probability chart, nor an investment portfolio. Life is the hand you grasp when the storm threatens to tear you apart. It is the stubborn refusal to let go, even when the wind claws at your bones. And when you find yourself standing in the dust with others depending on you, remember this. Your worth is not measured by logic, but by love, not by efficiency, but by the courage to carry another through the storm. The days following the storm carved a rhythm of exhaustion into the guardians and children alike. Damien Cole stumbled through each sunrise with grit in his teeth and soreness in his bones. Yet he carried himself as though he had reservoirs no storm could drain. The truth was less romantic. His stomach had become a hollow ache, his lips cracked from dehydration, his shoulders raw from carrying children, too tired to walk. But he never allowed his weakness to spill into the children's eyes. They deserved reassurance, not despair. He cracked jokes when his throat was dry, sang when his chest rattled, teased them into laughter even when his body screamed for sleep. The other guardians grew restless. Serenial pulsed with agitation, its crystalline form emitting sharp, dissonant tones. Statistical decline evident. Food depletion at unsustainable levels. Probability of total collapse exceeds 61%. Recommend elimination of non-viable dependents. Zyrak's mandibles clattered in agreement, his armored legs stamping impatient rhythms into the dirt. Excess burden jeopardizes stronglings. Survival demands sacrifice. Frol quivered in its containment suit, shifting from green to red to gray in rapid cycles. Yes, yes, yes. Trim the herd. Cut away inefficiency. Invest in winners, not losers. Damien spat sand onto the ground, glaring at the three. You keep saying sacrifice like it's just numbers. They're kids. Hungry kids, scared kids, but not numbers. You want efficiency. Try keeping them alive instead of trimming your spreadsheet. Serenial flared brighter. Your sentiment undermines mission integrity. Damien barked a laugh that sounded more like a cough. No, my sentiment is the only reason any of them are still breathing after that storm. Remember? You were busy calculating wind vectors while I was dragging their tiny bodies out of the dust. If integrity means leaving children to die, you can shove it. The alien children had begun to mirror their chosen protector. They followed Damien in tight clusters, mimicking his mannerisms, repeating his sarcastic phrases in broken translations, clutching his sleeves as though he were their anchor in an endless ocean. A feathered girl perched on his shoulders each morning, refusing to budge even when he groaned. A crystalline boy polished Damien's boots with fragments of sand, whispering about honor. A reptilian toddler clung to his belt, waddling behind him no matter how far he walked. He never complained. He couldn't. Their trust was the only fuel that kept him moving. But the test was designed to crush trust. On the 10th night, their campfire's glow drew predators from the shadows. The beasts slithered on jointed legs, their bodies plated with scales like molten iron. 6 of them encircled the group, eyes glowing with cruel intelligence. Their jaws unhinged with metallic screeches. The children froze, terror locking their limbs. Serenial calculated probabilities at the speed of light. Zyrak's instincts urged him to leap forward, but the predators shifted toward the smallest cluster of children. He faltered. Damien didn't. He grabbed the nearest shard of rock, jagged and pitifully small against armored hides, and charged. His roar ripped through the night, startling even the beasts. He slammed into the first predator with reckless momentum, burying the shard into the seam between its plates. It shrieked and recoiled. The others surged. "Moo!" Damien bellowed at the children, his voice breaking. He planted himself between them and death, slashing, striking, bleeding. A beast's claw raked his arm, tearing skin to the bone. He swung again anyway. His legs buckled when another slammed into his ribs, but he forced himself upright, teeth clenched, blood spraying his lips. The children cried out, their voices breaking the sterile silence Serenial once cherished. Zyrak screeched with frustration, torn between instinct and hesitation. For a heartbeat, it seemed the human would stand alone, broken beneath a tide of monsters. Then something shifted. The sight of Damien's stubborn defiance stirred something ancient in his alien counterparts. Zyrak lunged, impaling a predator with serrated limbs. Serenial unleashed a blinding pulse, searing the beast's senses with crystalline light. Even Frol, trembling and incoherent, hurled its gelatinous mass onto a predator's face, suffocating it long enough for Damien to smash its skull with a rock. Together, they drove the beasts back into the night, leaving blood and silence in their wake. Damien collapsed to his knees, chest heaving, wounds spilling crimson across the dirt. The children swarmed him instantly, their tiny hands pressing against gashes with whatever scraps they could find. Feathers, leaves, fragments of crystalline skin, all became bandages in their desperate grip. He coughed, smiled weakly, and whispered, "Told you I'd handle the babysitting." That night, the campfire burned brighter than ever. Serenial remained silent, its glow dim and contemplative. Zyrak stood watch, mandibles clicking in restless thought. Frol hovered near the edge of the group, colors shifting toward uneasy blues. But the children, the children, gathered around Damien like planets around a sun, their laughter trembling with relief, their faith unshakable. Every morning afterward, Damien woke weaker. His muscles trembled under loads that once felt light. His vision blurred when dehydration pressed against his skull. Yet he smiled through cracked lips, teased the children when they stumbled, taught them to kick balls of bundled cloth like earth soccer, led them in songs he half remembered. He gave his food away, split his water into portions so small they barely wet his tongue, all to ensure the children did not feel hunger as deeply as he did. The other guardians watched with unease. Serenial recalculated endlessly, unable to reconcile a human's reckless generosity with survival. Zyrak clicked with frustration, half admiring, half condemning the defiance. Frol muttered about collapse, about wasted resources, about irrational investments. But the children no longer cared for their words. They had chosen. They had a guardian who bled, laughed, and starved with them, and that was all they needed. On the 15th day, Damien nearly collapsed mid-step. The sun beat down mercilessly, his skin blistered, his throat cracked. A crystalline boy tugged his sleeve, urging him to rest. He shook his head, smiling faintly. "Rest later. Walk now." The boy would not let go, so Damien lifted him onto his back despite the weight. His knees shook, but he carried on, each step a declaration that he would not yield. And here is where you, reader, must understand. Strength is not the absence of weakness. Strength is the decision to rise when weakness crushes you. It is bleeding and laughing in the same breath, carrying another when your own legs threaten to break. The galaxy may worship efficiency, logic, and profit, But life bows to love, not numbers. When you are faced with your predators, your storms, your hunger, choose to stand anyway. Choose to carry anyway. Choose to love anyway. For it is in that choice, not in survival charts or investments, that true worth is found. By the fourth week on Quran 7, Damien Cole's body had become a patchwork of scars, burns, and bruises. Yet he moved with the same unyielding stubbornness that had carried him through every storm and predator attack. The children no longer flinched at the growl of distant beasts or the hiss of shifting sands. They had learned to stand straighter, to huddle together, to laugh even when their stomachs ached with emptiness. They were still fragile, but they were no longer afraid. Not while their human guardian kept breathing. Serenial had grown strangely quiet. Where once its crystalline body pulsed with arrogant certainty, now its glow flickered with hesitation. It had watched Damien bleed, starve, and sacrifice without calculation, and its formulas had begun to fracture. Zyrak, too, had shifted, his armored body less rigid, his mandibles clattering less with disdain and more with restless curiosity. Even Frol, though still prone to whining about inefficiency, lingered closer to the group, its hues softer, its movements less frantic. The human's influence spread like fire through dry grass, impossible to contain. On the 25th day, a new trial came. The overseers above released no warning, but the ground itself gave one. The sand began to hum, vibrating underfoot. Damien crouched, his instincts prickling. Kids, close ranks. Hands together, like we practiced. The children obeyed instantly, forming chains, their faces tense, but not panicked. Zyrak tilted his head, listening to subterranean tremors. Burrowers, he rasped, mandibles twitching. Serenial pulsed faintly. Probability of total group annihilation, 40%. Frol shivered, muttering, bad investment, bad return. Then the ground erupted. Massive creatures with segmented bodies, armored in ridges of obsidian, burst from the earth. Their mandibles snapped with bone-crushing force. Their tails cracked like whips. 5 of them rose in a circle around the group, cutting off escape. The children screamed. Damien stood firm, gripping nothing but a sharpened bone he had scavenged days earlier. He looked absurd, one human with a stick against monsters that could devour him whole. But his voice rang steady. They come for us. They leave empty. Nobody touches my kids. The first beast lunged, and Damien threw himself forward, driving the bone deep into its eye. Black fluid sprayed across his chest. The beast shrieked, thrashing, collapsing in convulsions. The others surged in fury. Damien staggered back, chest heaving, arms trembling, but he did not retreat. He was too slow, too worn down, and one of the burrowers slammed its tail into his side, sending him sprawling. Pain tore through him like fire. He spat blood and forced himself up. The children cried his name, their voices sharp with terror. For a heartbeat, Damien thought he had failed them. But then Zyrak leapt with a roar, driving his bladed limbs into the flank of a beast. Serenial released a piercing resonance, shattering stone and forcing 2 burrowers back. Even Frol flung itself forward, encasing a tail in gelatinous mass to slow its strike. Damien grinned through bloodied lips. About time you all joined the party. The battle raged. Damien fought like a man possessed, slashing, stabbing, dodging, each movement wrung from the last reserves of his strength. His body screamed with every impact, but his mind clung to one truth. Every second he held the line was another second the children lived. Together, guardians and human tore into the beast until at last the final one fell, twitching, sinking back into the sand with a rattling hiss. Silence returned, heavy and suffocating. Damien collapsed to his knees, blood pouring from gashes across his body. His vision blurred, his breath shallow. He could feel his strength slipping like water through his fingers. The children swarmed him, their hands pressing against his wounds, their voices begging him not to leave them. He smiled faintly, whispering, "Hey now, don't cry. I promised I'd see you through." Serenial approached, its crystalline glow dim but steady. "Human, your actions contradict all models. Sacrifice at this magnitude, is illogical. Yet results are undeniable. All 42 children remain alive. Probability charts broken. Zyrak lowered his head, mandibles clicking softly. You fought with honor beyond reason. My kind would not have done so. You are guardian. Even Frol, quivering, pulse soft pink. Wasteful, irrational, but beautiful. The overseers descended days later, their shuttles gleaming silver against the dying sun. They expected efficient guardians, disciplined survivors. Instead, they found one human draped in bandages, emaciated yet smiling, surrounded by children who refused to release him. When they tried to separate him, the children wailed, clung to his arms and legs, screamed in languages the overseers had never heard. Damien, barely conscious, lifted his head and rasped, "Don't blame them. I'm their family now. That's what survival means. Nobody left behind." The overseers deliberated. Their instruments told them he had broken every principle of logic. Their charts showed his methods invited collapse. And yet the undeniable evidence lay before them. Every child alive, every spirit unbroken. They conferred, their alien voices blending into sterile tones, until at last they turned to Damien. "Human, despite inefficiency, you pass. You are named Guardian." He coughed, laughed weakly, and shook his head. "Great. Do I get a medal? Or at least a beer?" The children laughed with him, their voices clear, defiant, filled with love. For the first time in the trial's long history, joy had replaced silence at its conclusion. And now, reader, the lesson lies not in the blood spilled nor the beast slain, but in the stubborn heart of one man who refused to measure worth in numbers. You will face storms that try to scatter you, predators that try to break you, voices that tell you to abandon the weak. Remember Damien Cole. Remember the human who starved so others could eat, who bled so others could laugh, who stood when logic demanded he fall. True strength is not found in charts, nor efficiency, nor victory at any cost. True strength is found in love so reckless it seems foolish, in sacrifice so deep it defies reason, in courage that holds the smallest hand in the fiercest storm. And when your own trial comes, may you choose as he chose, to protect, to carry, to love, no matter what it costs.